Westmoreland Community Connections is a presentation of Citizens Fiber.
Welcome to Westmoreland Community Connections, a look at issues and happenings on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB. Here now is your host, Jennifer Miele, Chief Communications Officer and Managing Director of Evangelization of the Diocese of Greensburg.
Welcome to WHJB and Westmoreland Community Connections. I'm your host, Jennifer Miele. I'm the Chief Communications Officer and Managing Director of Evangelization for the Diocese of Greensburg, and thrilled to host this wonderful show on WHJB. My guest today is Cassie Ellson. She's the Community Education Coordinator for the Blackburn Center. Cassie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Cassie, I want to first talk about you, your educational background, your work experience, and how you got to the position you're in now. Can you talk to us a little bit about you?
Sure. So my educational background, actually, I started in the behavioral health field, but I eventually received my master's degree in criminal justice and have always been interested in victim services, the study of victimology, and have always really just wanted to do my part to, help my own community. And by working for Blackburn Center, I'm able to help educate and really, bring some awareness about issues of gender-based violence to my own community. So it's been a wonderful few years that I've been with the agency, and it's wonderful to work for an agency that does so much good throughout Westmoreland County.
Tell us about the role of a community education coordinator and what your normal workday looks like.
Well, there really is not a normal workday, as I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. I do a lot of outreach to our community partners. I provide training and education for businesses and organizations throughout Westmoreland County. We're also involved in the educational realm with higher education, most of the colleges and universities in Westmoreland County, as well as the elementary and high schools. So I get to do a lot of that. I also answer Blackburn Center's hotline. So I provide crisis counseling on the hotline. And basically, as most of us at Blackburn Center do, I make sure that all the needs are being met. Anybody who's looking for assistance from Blackburn Center is getting it. And we all really work together to make sure that goal is met.
That's wonderful. Let's start with the first piece of your job that you talked about, and that's education in the schools. How important is it that young people are educated on domestic violence?
It's extremely important. The earlier that children can understand the concept of empathy and ways to express their feelings and relating to other people, the more likely they are to refrain from turning to violence in the future. So while we don't start talking specifically about domestic violence or sexual assault with the younger kids, we do start building that foundation to help them understand empathy, to help them understand that there are ways to express themselves without hurting anybody else. And, we build on that up through the grades and, like I said, all the way into college and university. So it's very important to start early.
So do you have individuals who would normally go into the schools to speak, or do you have the collaterals that you send in for the teachers to review?
Both. So we have education specialists who work specifically in the elementary, junior high, and high school levels, and they help by providing programming for the teachers, but also by going into the classroom or participating virtually to teach lessons about, whatever level that they are in terms of the age of the kids in school. So they do a lot of different programming for different grades. We have several educational videos that they use, but that are also available on our YouTube channel for parents and teachers to also have access to.
I was going to ask you how some of this outreach has changed because of COVID-19. And I think you started to answer that with digital connectivity. Are you seeing an increase in the YouTube viewership and the digital connectivity throughout COVID?
Yes, absolutely. And part of that is really because we have focused a lot more on those resources. And at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, we really had to redo a lot of the ways that we reach the community, that we reach students, that we reach clients. And it has been really successful. And we've seen a lot of people who are participating virtually. We've been able to reach a lot of groups and classrooms through the technology that we have to be able to do that. So it's been a really interesting kind of shift for us, but it's been a positive one overall.
Yeah, I mean, you were forced, just like the rest of us, to switch to digital connectivity. I'm sure a lot of schools and a lot of the events that you would normally attend as part of the educational outreach were canceled or, done from home. So do you also have speakers available for things like Rotary clubs and, community groups, church groups, things like that, who may want to have some more information on the services that you provide?
Yes, absolutely. We have speakers available for any community group that's interested. We can speak on a variety of different topics, and we're able to put together presentations based on what groups in particular are looking for. So, we're not confined by offering certain presentations or topical conversations. If there's a group that is specifically looking to learn more about, say, domestic violence or human trafficking, things along those lines, we can really work with them to bring them the kind of programming that they're looking for. So yes, we are happy to participate and provide speakers for groups and businesses throughout the community. We can do that virtually or safely in person, which we have to, obviously take on a case-by-case basis. But we love getting to be part of community groups and have been able to be part of a lot of groups, both before and after the pandemic started. So again, the technology that we have has really allowed us to continue to do that.
Cassie, how could people get in touch with you or the Blackburn Center if they were interested in connecting for educational services?
The best way to reach us is to use the hotline. That number is 888-832-2272. That number is answered 24/7. And if you're looking for a speaker or for another educational program, you can let the person who answers know, and then they will be able to get you in touch with the right person. The other option would be to call our office. That number is 724-836-9540 and extension 114 for educational programs.
Wonderful. You are based in Greensburg, and do you still offer in-person services in Greensburg, or has that transitioned all to virtual as well?
Right now, we are still providing virtual and phone services, but again, depending on what the needs are of our clients, I'm sure there is some flexibility there. If somebody would need an in-person meeting, we can talk about arranging that. But in general, all of our services right now are being provided virtually.
So let's dive into a few topics, and I think one of them that you already touched on is human trafficking and the almost media splash that has been happening over the last 5 years is probably a blessing for your organization, that there is actual awareness about human trafficking that's for so long that there wasn't. So are you seeing those developments, and are you seeing good progress with the work being done around human trafficking?
It has certainly been a good thing to see so much more awareness, so many more people talking about human trafficking in the, like you said, the last few years. It doesn't solve the problem, of course, by any means, but it is a good step in the right direction. If people are more aware of human trafficking being a problem in their own communities, they're more likely to speak up if they see something that they think might be a problem or that seems like somebody's in trouble. So in that way, yes, it's been very good to have that extra visibility around that topic.
What are some of the things that you would tell people at home about human trafficking that they may not be thinking about on a daily basis to, recognize, as you said, someone in trouble?
Well, the biggest thing to remember is that human trafficking can happen to anyone. And so it doesn't always happen in secret. It can really be in plain sight sometimes. And I think a lot of times the first kind of images that come to mind when you talk about human trafficking are those of, people kind of being hidden in secret to work. And that's just not the case. So, we work with the Human Trafficking Task Force in Westmoreland County, and there are a lot of tips online about what to look for and how to educate yourself. You can visit our website at blackburncenter.org, and we do have a page with information about human trafficking. And as I mentioned earlier, human trafficking is one of the topics that we speak about in the community to different community groups. We're happy to do education around that for anybody who's interested. But I think the biggest thing really that we want to make sure people understand is that we are not free from human trafficking just because it doesn't feel like we live in a place that would support something like that. It really can happen anywhere, and it's important to be educated about it.
And it has happened. I mean, we've seen the news stories, and I'm sure, Anne, your executive director, probably works side by side with legislators to make sure that, the legislation is strong enough that if these individuals are caught, that they can be punished. And that's a change in itself as well over the last decade.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely one of the positive things that have come from seeing the awareness being raised, the education being more widespread. And at Blackburn Center, we do offer services to victims and survivors of human trafficking. We just, like other survivors, we have counseling and therapy and shelter available for them. So that's really important for us to make sure that we're visible in the community, to make sure that people have those resources.
It's so important because once they separate themselves from that sort of crime organization, where do they turn, and how vulnerable are they to get sucked back into, that crime organization? And it's wonderful that an organization like yours exists, for sure. But that doesn't come without a cost either. And you rely on community support, on donations. Tell us a little bit about what you need from the community to continue the good work that you do.
We do rely heavily on our community. We rely on donations for many different reasons. Financial support is so important. We offer all of our services to clients free of charge to those clients. That makes sure that anybody who needs our help has access to it. And so the financial aspect, the donations that we receive from the community are so important in helping us to continue to provide those services. We also have an Amazon wish list with items that we can use for our shelter. Because of the pandemic, we are not accepting in-person donations as we typically would, but the items that we need are all listed on our Amazon wish list, and they can be sent directly to us. And that takes out that, the risk of getting anybody else involved in the passing along of items. And we have several fundraiser events most of the time. And that, of course, was limited last year. And so we're really trying to start to do a lot more virtually in terms of fundraising and other ways to get the word out about how people can help us, how they can donate. We also ask for people to donate their time if they have time to be trained as a volunteer. We have volunteer classes coming up in March. And it's an extensive training, but it helps us a lot by having those extra hands around the office and to answer the hotline.
Absolutely. You're listening to Westmoreland Community Connections on WHJB. I'm your host, Jennifer Miele, and joining me today is Cassie Ellson. She's the Community Education Coordinator for the Blackburn Center in Greensburg. In just a few minutes, she's going to talk to us about the hotline, how it's being used, and some fundraisers that are much needed for an organization that has continued their good work throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll be right back.
This is Westmoreland Community Connections on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB. If you have a suggestion for a topic, or if your nonprofit organization would like to be featured on this program, call us during regular business hours at 724-216-1200.
Westmoreland Community Connections is a presentation of Citizens Fiber.
Welcome back to Westmoreland Community Connections on WHJB. I'm your host, Jennifer Miele, and joining me today is Cassie Ellson. She's the Community Education Coordinator at the Blackburn Center in Greensburg. And she's done a wonderful job the last few minutes explaining to us about all of the educational and outreach initiatives done by the Blackburn Center. But just like every organization that continues to do good work, COVID-19 has impacted operations, which means no fundraisers, no in-person donations, things like that. So this organization has really had to regroup and pivot as to how they are collecting donated items and raising funds to support survivors of abuse and, of course, survivors of human trafficking. So Cassie was just telling us that the fundraisers that have been done previously, and you've had some fantastic ones, the Walk a Mile in Her Shoes, right? That's a great event that you guys do every year.
Yes, and that one is coming up for the first time virtually in April. So we are so excited to be able to bring that back this year and to hopefully have our biggest turnout ever since it's available virtually.
Okay, if people are just listening in and they don't understand what this is, why don't you give them a lowdown about high heels, would you?
Gladly. So every year for the past 9 years, not including last year, Blackburn Center has hosted Walk a Mile in Her Shoes, which is an event to raise funds for Blackburn Center, but also to bring education and awareness around issues of gender-based violence to our community. And what we've done when we've met in person for this event is to provide red high-heeled shoes for all of the men who are participating to literally walk a mile in her shoes. So while we understand and we are absolutely aware that issues of gender-based violence affect women, men, and children, this event in particular is to really highlight the role that men can play in preventing violence against women. And so we've asked them in the past to wear red high heels and walk a mile in those shoes. And, unfortunately this year we can't meet in person to see that, but we're hoping that we will see some pictures on social media and, people who are participating virtually who are still kind of taking that initiative on their own to wear somebody else's shoes to walk a mile.
So tell us how it works virtually. Do they go on the website and sign up and then they send a picture in or a video in or something like that?
Yeah, so they can register on our website, blackburncenter.org, or they can call the office. Again, at 724-837-9540. The extension to register for the walk is 144. Once you register, which there is no fee to register this year, we do ask for a $5 donation or a little bit more if you have it to give, but you can register for free. As soon as you register, you'll be given access to many online activities that surround education about gender-based violence. And during the week of, the days of April 7th through April 10th, we'll be asking those who are registered to walk a mile and to share pictures and videos of their walk using the hashtag #WalkBlackburn. And that way we will be collecting and seeing everybody who's participating, and we'll be able to share that with everybody who's involved. So that's what we're doing. And like I said, as soon as you're registered, you'll have access to the activities that we have, the educational materials, and a lot of other really good stuff that we'll be able to provide to anybody who wants to participate this year.
Sounds so fun. The other thing is, are you taking sponsors as well for the virtual event? And how can you find that sponsorship information and what are you looking for?
Yes, absolutely. We are always looking for sponsors and appreciate any sponsorship that we can get from our community. That information is on the website as well, or you can contact the extension that I mentioned before, and that's our office number at extension 144 to ask about sponsorship opportunities.
You guys are really, changing the way that you do business, so to speak. And it sounds like it's going to be a wonderful event. So we're going to have to regroup later in the summer to see how it all went and encourage people to submit those photos and videos so that everyone can see that. I think that's fantastic. I'm talking to Cassie Ellson. She's the Community Education Coordinator at the Blackburn Center in Greensburg. Lots of support that you give, but actually I have to praise you on what I think is excellent community outreach and marketing, because I had spent many years working at Excella Health, a wonderful experience there, and you really couldn't go too far inside the hospital without seeing a flyer for the Blackburn Center, without seeing the crisis hotline there. How important are those community partners to getting the word out about what you do?
Our community partners are very important, and in order for us to spread the word as much as we need to, we certainly rely on the support and partnership of other businesses and organizations in our community. Like you said, with the hospitals, we really work closely with particularly the emergency room staff at all of the hospitals in Westmoreland County. We try to get those flyers out and make sure that no matter where somebody goes throughout the county, they know that Blackburn Center is there as a resource for them or for somebody that they care about who might be going through a hard time or has been impacted by violence. So we definitely try to keep close contact with a lot of organizations throughout the community. I know I personally get to collaborate with a lot of different people. We have so many wonderful organizations and wonderful leaders throughout our county who really help to support Blackburn Center's mission and are passionate about making sure that community members have the help and resources that they need.
That's wonderful. As things started to turn with COVID-19 and more people started to stay home, what can you tell us, or can you illustrate for us what that means for incidents of domestic violence when there's a lockdown situation?
That's hard to speak to only because we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. We have a lot of people who are asking us, if we've received a lot more hotline calls or things like that. Our hotline has remained busy. Like I said, we answer 24/7. And so we do field a lot of incidents that happen with or without a pandemic going on. Mm-hmm. We try to make our services as available as possible to anybody who needs them. And so sometimes that means just looking more closely at how people can reach us. And so we really try to make sure that anybody, even if they are, isolating at home, can still have access to the resources that we offer. It is really important to note that if you believe that somebody that you know or love is in a situation where there might be violence happening, that, we can help you help them. So it's important also for people who are supporting those that may be in a violent situation to be able to reach out, especially in the midst of a pandemic when some people can't leave their homes. It can be a scary time for the people who love them as well. And so we're here to support those people in addition to victims and survivors of violence. So anybody can call our hotline to get some support or to get some ideas or tips for helping somebody that they love as well.
And that hotline is 888-832-2272. That's the crisis hotline at the Blackburn Center in Greensburg. I'm talking to Cassie Ellson. She's the community education coordinator for the Blackburn Center, and you're listening to Westmoreland Community Connections on WHJB. Cassie, is it often, or what happens when a woman who is victimized by domestic violence also has children in tow? What happens, and what kind of services do you offer in cases like that?
Great question. And that we do see that frequently. We offer services for both women, men, or all women, men, and children. So if a woman who is being victimized by domestic violence has dependent children, they are eligible to enter our shelter if it's decided that that's what they want to do. And if if during their screening they are eligible to come into our shelter. So children, dependent children of victims and survivors are welcome in our shelter. We also have counseling for children specifically who are involved in domestic violence situations at home, both with a parent or without a parent.
It's really something to think about when you talk about the donations that are needed. Talk to me again about how you've utilized Amazon to help you stock, I guess is the right word, the shelter.
Before the pandemic, we accepted donations of new items, clothing, toiletries, toys, things like that. And because of the pandemic, we've stopped doing that just to reduce the risk to our community members, to our shelter clients, and to our staff. And so what we've done is create a wish list on Amazon. If you go on Amazon, you can just search Blackburn Center wish list, and you'll see a list of items that are currently needed at our shelter. And by ordering them on Amazon off of the wish list, they get sent directly to us at Blackburn Center, which takes out that risk of exposure for a lot of people involved. And so that's where we're really asking for people to check that out if they want to donate items. That list is kept updated, and so you'll never be purchasing or sending something that is not needed at the time.
And if it's not Amazon that you want to use to help the Blackburn Center, they do have a very important virtual fundraiser coming up April 7th through 10th. You can jump on and register for the Walk a Mile in Her Shoes. That's available on your website, social media, and the kind of engagement that you're looking for?
Yes, available on our website is probably the easiest way. blackburncenter.org. You'll see ways from there to register. The actual registration website is blackburnCenter.akaaraisin.com/walk2021. So that's a bit of a mouthful to find. If you go just to blackburncenter.org, you will find the links to get there to register. Registration is free. We do suggest a $5 donation, and anything that you can give when you register is greatly appreciated and will be put to good use.
Talking to Cassie Ellson, the Community Education Coordinator for the Blackburn Center. Once again, if you are interested in having a speaker from the Blackburn Center come out to educate your community group regarding domestic violence or human trafficking, Cassie, tell me again the number to call.
The office number is 724-837-9540, and you can dial extension 114 for education requests.
And for emergency situations, anyone who is experiencing domestic violence or needs help to get out of a very dangerous situation, including human trafficking, where should they go?
Our 24/7 hotline number is 888-832-2272.
The Blackburn Center in Greensburg has an excellent reputation of helping individuals who are survivors of abuse, their children, a wonderful outreach, education coordinators, counselors, also a shelter. Not much more we could ask for. Are you serving all of Westmoreland County, greater Westmoreland County now?
That's right, all of Westmoreland County. And if you don't live in Westmoreland County, you can still call our hotline. We can still answer questions and talk with you there and get you connected if you need services that are within your own county. So our hotline is open to anybody.
Cassie, any final thoughts for anyone listening today? Anything that we didn't cover that you want them to know?
I think we covered a lot of information today. I really appreciate that opportunity. Of course, the most important thing right now on our agenda at Blackburn Center is Walk a Mile in Her Shoes. That registration is up on our website and will be taking place virtually April 7th through April 10th. And but leading up until April 7th, once you register, there will be plenty of activities, plenty of educational material that you'll have access to. And like you said, we rely very much on our community partners, on our donors, on our sponsors. And so we're just very, very thankful to have this platform to be able to get the word out there. So I appreciate that very much.
Cassie Ellson, the Community Education Coordinator for the Blackburn Center. You're listening to Westmoreland Community Connections on WHJB. I'm your host, Jennifer Miele. Thanks so much for listening.
This has been Westmoreland Community Connections, a look at issues and happenings in and around Westmoreland County. Join us again next week on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB.
Westmoreland Community Connections is a presentation of Citizens Fiber.